Oh, I just got back from Vegas and I walked into the room there, and a tall, dark croupier came up to me and he said, Miss West, I'll lay you 10 to 1. And I said, it's an odd hour, but I'll be there. I actually prefer that a man come up to my room at about midnight. We make love, and then he turns into a pizza. Those are actually two Charles Pierce lines that I've stolen just for this recording. I wanted to tell Andy here about my afternoon tea with Mae West, which occurred in, I think it was 1976, if you can imagine. In those days, you could go to the phone book and you could actually look up West Mae, and there was a number, and it rang into the Ravenswood where she lived, and you would get a live person answering who said, the Ravenswood, and then they'd ring to her room, her suite, which was no big suite. It was simply probably one of the nicer ones, but it was a suite in the Ravenswood, and her caregiver, Paul Novak, one of the muscle men who worked in her show previously, was taking care of her at that time. I mean, he was supposedly her lover or whatever, but he was really her caretaker, and you'd make an appointment to go have tea. And, it would be a month out or whatever, but almost anyone could do it. You just had to prove your enthusiasm. So we went one afternoon. It was New Year's Eve, and I think it was, I don't know if it was 76, whatever. And we sat, we were seated in a room, in the living room, and various places we were appointed. There were about 3 of us, plus Paul. Paul set everything up, and this room was all white. Everything was white. Piano was white. All the chairs were white. Everything was white, and you just sort of waited. I'm telling you, our hearts are beating. And all of a sudden, you'd swear an orchestra was playing. It wasn't. But the room was feng shuied, I guess, for her entrance. And you kept looking at this place. It was the only place she could come in. And all of a sudden, there she is. And you see her first, you see her back, and she's looking in a full-length mirror. And she had that long hair. And the first thing you see is from her back is she flips that hair. And then she turns, and she's 80-ish, I think, or maybe late 70s. Anyway, the entrance was worth the whole thing. You're like, oh my God. And then she walks around, puts her little hand out, and all those rumors about her being a man were ridiculous. Her hands were teensy, teensy, teensy little hands. So anyway, she sits down and she jokes, and we ask questions, and it was incredibly fabulous. But this was around the time of Hello Dolly. And of course, Streisand had done an impersonation of her, basically. So we thought we'd ask her about that. And she said, oh, yeah, yeah, I was at a party with her the other night, and she came up to me, she got down on her knees. And she said, oh, Miss West, I just love you. I admire you so much. And I said to her, well, if you admire me so much, why don't you stop imitating me? She said, you know what, I wanted to kick her in the mouth. So we just screamed, of course, at that. And she would deliver her jokes, in her Mae Westian style. She'd talk a little bit more normal when she wasn't delivering a punchline. So we had this book I wanted her to sign with a picture of her inside, and called Grand Illusions, I think. She took the book and she leafed through it, and the picture of, I'll get to that in a moment. She leafed through the book, she saw the picture of her, and she signed it, very cordially. And then she closed the book and she said, it's a nice book. Why'd they put Marlena on the cover? Then she proceeded to tell us to write to the publisher and ask the publisher why Marlena was on the cover and she wasn't. So I did, actually. I wrote to the publisher. I asked them why Marlena was on the cover and she wasn't. I sent the letter to Mae. She didn't answer, but anyway. So we love Mae, right? We love to impersonate Mae. And I'm going to just read a little tribute I wrote to her. I wrote about 5 women who had influenced me. And she did influence me in ways that were very deep and complicated because of her identification with, you'll see, you'll hear. Okay, so I dressed for May today. Oh, yeah, my feathers and my leather, because I felt that she owed I owed her a little tribute, a little costume tribute. Okay, so I wrote about these five women who I felt had really instilled something in me, and May certainly instilled some sort of rebelliousness and some sexual freedom and something that was very deep. You know, she was much more complicated than she appeared to be. Choosing an artistic influence is fraught because I don't want to immediately come off as a stereotypical gay man who is shallow and utterly lacking in gravitas. That's why I chose May over Judy or Marilyn. I'm only kind of kidding. I saw Judy at the Palace when I was a teenager, and it was empowering in ways I won't enumerate here, but the electricity she generated from the stage to the audiences was like nothing I've ever experienced before and since. And Marilyn, well, that overwhelming blend of vulnerability and wanton sexuality seemed like a lesson plan for so many of us. But May didn't really achieve her place in the Hollywood firmament until she was older than Marilyn was when she died. She had been on the New York stage and in jail writing plays about gay boys and transsexuals, one of them brazenly called Sex, an overt marketing ploy the playwright was counting on. May was a queer sexual rebel even before John Recchi, a rebel who manifested Shakespeare's advice, to thine own self be true. Because even in her many incarnations throughout her 7-decade career, May was May, owning her self knowing, caricatured sexuality and fierce intelligence, and always getting the last laugh. There were many other ladies and dames on my list of superstars, including Dorothy Parker, Edith Sitwell, Zelda Fitzgerald, Vita Sackville West, Laura Nyro, and so many more, Ida Lupino, Lucy. But May is the one who has my heart. Oh, thank you, Michael.